Please check out our sponsors NordVPN for the best in online security. It's the best VPN on the market, and you can try it risk-free now with a 30-day money-back guarantee by visiting nordvpn.com/heartandhand. That's nordvpn.com/heartandhand, and it's risk-free with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Hello everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name is David Edgar, and as always, I am your host, and I'm joined this week by the President of the North American Rangers Supporters Association, Gary Gillan. Hello Gary, how goes it?
Good morning, David. It goes... Well, you know what? That's a kind of bit of a multifaceted question, isn't it? In terms of Rangers,
Yes.
In terms of Rangers, no, it's not going great. No, not going great at all.
It's not. No, it isn't. And we'll just get straight into that. I was struck by a thought on Saturday, and there was plenty of time, unfortunately, after the match when you're sitting reflecting on it, because there wasn't any new things, I think, to go over in terms of performance, guys. It's a performance we've seen, unfortunately, several times. Barry Ferguson confirmed, I think, what we all think about this side, that it gets up for big games, doesn't get up for, as he put it, its bread and butter. And we know this. That's why he's in the chair in the first place. A manager has gone. We've seen these performances, the issues, and we'll talk about them in more detail, obviously. But again, they're not new. It wasn't something that just sprung up on Saturday. And I kind of looked around the team and spoke to people, and the mood is obviously a bit different than it would be if obviously this was business as usual for the foreseeable. But there is a takeover coming, which we know. And it kind of struck me that we're not so much entering the end of a season or even the end of a team as the end of an era. Now, an era doesn't have to necessarily, when you use that word, doesn't mean it's been great. Times pass and things change. And it kind of struck me that it's been 10 years since the Three Bears rescued the club from the clutches of Ashley and the Spivs. And I think if you were to plot a graph of how that's gone, it would resemble an upside-down U shape, because we started off in a bad place. You know, morale was in the gutter. Team, obviously, far worse even than now in the championship, playing really badly. And then it got better. There were dips along the way, but it got better, culminating in the title in 2021, the Europa League final the following year. And then the dip started happening again. And it brings us to where we are now, which is a team that don't perform, is not packed with extraordinary talent, I think it's fair to say, that regularly put in performances that I don't think are acceptable to Rangers supporters, and a fan base that is just absolutely sick of it. And just as I say, as I was leaving on Saturday, that thought occurred to me, and I thought, thank God there is change coming, because we need it. The club is stale.
Yeah, I mean, very well put there, David. It's one of these things that actually I didn't realise until you said it there, that it is 10 years since we were rescued, and the euphoric feelings and familiarity that these guys brought back to the club. It gave us that opportunity to think, well, I mean, let's just hypothesize for a second here. We have a conversation then, and what do we think the next 10 years is going to look like? My opinion would have been 10 years of progression back to domination at some point, not immediately, of course, based on where we were at the time. But it's been the squiggliest of squiggly lines. I know you said it's like an upside down U. I mean, it's just been so up and down and all over the place this past wee while that it's difficult to know where even to start, you know. So these potential new owners are going to come in, and you know, what's the blueprint? There really can't be a very obvious blueprint for this particular type and style of situation, because each club is unique and each circumstance is unique. But oh man, it's when you look at that 10-year period now, just kind of blocking it in that time constriction, it's just way below, way below. I'll give you an example. Yesterday I said to Leo, we were chatting, Leo, as you know, is my son, and he just doesn't get up for the Rangers games now. And yesterday I said, look, why don't you come down? And he said, like, everybody's always angry. And I said, well, well, that's part of being a Rangers fan these days. Like, you're 15, you don't remember the good times in the past. But he says it's just the same old. Even when we win, there's just there's like a weird atmosphere around when we win, because we're kind of semi-surprised and still a wee bit grumpy and disgruntled. There's so much to fix, David.
Yeah, there is, and I think it's fair to say, you know, there was probably 5-6 years progression, but then steady decline, and it's led to where we are now, where we have, I would argue, certainly the worst squad since before Gerrard came in, I think. And if anyone wants to argue with me on that, that's fine. But we're arguing, I think, over, you know, bald men combs thing. It's not a squad any of us feel is equipped to deliver silverware. It's proven that it isn't equipped to deliver silverware, and the mood among the fans is really low. And you know, the takeover has been the one bright spot really in the season, because I think that the people who have been running the club for the last few years, and we've spoken about it ad nauseum on the show, they're out of ideas. I mean, massively, and made so many mistakes and no credibility with the fans anyway. But you know, that's for another day. We'll talk about that when the change happens. But let's concentrate on the match at the weekend. And unfortunately, it was a familiar tale. Barry Ferguson said afterwards, it's the easiest thing in the world to get up for Celtic, to get up for Europe, but it's these games that count. And what he termed the bread and butter games, as I said. Now, I can understand that to a degree, guys, but there were 50,000 there. The sun was shining. You know, we're coming out of a long winter. The Hibs were playing well. No easy away support. Confident team that were up against you. It's a challenge. Big match on Thursday night. Places to be grabbed. And Rangers just didn't perform. And I watched the game back. And I'll be fair, you know, because when you watch the game back, you see things, obviously, that you maybe don't notice when you're caught up in the emotion of the game at the time. And we weren't as bad in the first half as I thought we were. We weren't actually that bad in the first half. We weren't great, but we were decent. With a more reliable goalkeeper and striker, we should have been a couple of goals up at half-time. But we weren't. We were a goal down. The second half was woeful, utterly unacceptable. And again, Barry Ferguson used that phrase, unacceptable. Not simply the quality that was lacking, which it was. I thought the passing was dreadful, really bad, as this Rangers team has a tendency to do, to get really ragged collectively. But movement, running, tracking players, effort, for want of a better word, I didn't think that was there. And that surely has to be a minimum requirement from any professional football side.
Yeah, I completely agree. In terms of, you know, back to, this is the bread and butter games, yeah, we know that. And back in the day, it was always fine margins between the Old Firm games, but it was the rest of the games. You know, the Old Firm games accounts for 34 or 38 league games, so that's a kind of bit of an obvious statement there in terms of these are the games that are going to actually win or lose you the title. But you know, this is against Hibs, which we know is always a big game, regardless of where Hibs or Rangers are at a given point in time. You know, lovely afternoon, it looks like, in the west of Scotland there, and the fact that everyone's excited. I mean, we have got stuff to look forward to between now and the end of the season, and we've got a bit of a target to try and win a game at Ibrox after it was a complete fortress at the beginning of the season, to be fair to Philippe Clement. And I don't understand. It was we've seen that game, David. We've seen that game how many times? Dozens and dozens and dozens of times. We've seen that type of style of game where we start off and we're kind of, you know, it's like a sparring match in boxing where we're just kind of, you know, throwing the jab out a wee bit and just seeing what's going to act and react in terms of what we do, what we don't do. And then they have one nondescript chance and we give up a goal, and then we have that Glacial look in our face, and then we don't really know what's going to happen. And there's not that confidence at home now that we seem to have away, where we're like, 2 goals of a start's no problem, we'll just get 4. It's there's some sort of mentality block there, and I don't know if it's the fans and the atmosphere and the volume of people that are there, or if it's just a revert to type. That's just who we are and what we do these days. No idea.
Yeah, that's an interesting point that's been made in the past about Ibrox can be difficult to play at, and I'm not. I hope to think in some areas I'm not that foolish, and it can be negative at Ibrox. Of course it can. We all know it. We've all sat there. It wasn't on Saturday. There was no toxic atmosphere. Fans were in, as I say, in a good mood before the game, and even in the second half, it wasn't vituperative anger. It was more a kind of annoyed resignation, really, because this is what this team do. The game itself, it starts off, and you're right, Rangers are comfortable enough. Again, not exactly starting at the tempo that I'd like, but I feel that I've moaned about this, managers have moaned about it, players moan about it, but nothing ever seems to change. Rangers take too long to get into the game, but it wasn't the worst start we'd made. But then we have a problem, and that is the fact that our goalkeeper is letting in routine efforts, making horrible goal-conceding efforts. It was felt like once every couple of games. It's now once a game. That's a straightforward shot from the edge of the box. It's well hit, but it's straight at him. He allows it to squirm through, and suddenly we're a goal behind. And I think when a goalkeeper hits a period of form like this, Gary, there's a sense in the crowd of he's going to make a mistake. And there's a sense in the defence of he might make a mistake, and it'll be a big one, and it'll be a goal. So there's always that edginess there around him, and it spreads. And that's the thing, goalkeeper's such an influential position in the team. When you're in a position with a goalkeeper that you do not trust them to make very routine stops, I'm not talking about the exceptional ones, the brilliant stuff. I'm talking about just the straightforward ones. Then it affects everything. It really does. It influences everything. And I think you saw that at the weekend, and everybody was kind of, looking around each other in the stand, and we're all going, yet again. And suddenly the game, we're behind, clean sheets out the window, it becomes a much more difficult match, and we think, here we go again.
Yeah.
I get that Jack Butland, if you took our three goalkeepers and you worked with him for a week, you would say he's the best at the three of them. I don't think anyone would disagree. But he is way out of form, way badly, harmfully out of form.
Yeah, and it's one of these things here. I was actually saying the same to a group chat with a couple of the guys over here, that I think what Barry and team are doing is they're making do with the best that they've got, and the best that they've got is woefully underperforming and not good enough right now. But what's the alternative? The alternative, then, it's easy for us to say as fans, is give someone else a try. They're still trying to win games. They're still trying to, make sure that the team are progressing. But here's a key thing for me that I was thinking about actually just yesterday, David, was I don't recall in any football that I've ever watched over my 50 plus years now, any goalkeeper that's able to play through a spell like this. There's the odd time where, an outfield player can get that kind of summoning of enthusiasm and support from the fans, from his teammates, and then just kind of work an edge and ease his way through it. I don't know any goalie that's managed to play their way through it, thinking I'll make that one wonder save and then that will be the catalyst to let me know psychologically and physically that I am who I think I am, and then everybody will start to get back to normal. I think what happens is you make that wonder save, and then everyone, exactly to your point, is just thinking, yep, but when is it going to bounce off your shoulder? When is it going to sliver through your fingers? When is it going to go through your legs? Because he didn't exactly cover himself in glory for the second goal on the weekend, not to preempt what we're going to talk about here. So I think that Saturday would be a wee bit of a blot in the copybook for me on Saturday, because I thought Saturday was a perfect time to put Liam Kelly in the goal and give Jacket a rest. And then we're kind of deciding or supposing what's going to happen on Thursday night. But we're at home. We've got a vocal support. As I said earlier, it's a beautiful day. It's against a team that we know are going to create chances. So he's not going to be standing there just on his own without any test or anything like that. And just see what happens if he gets that break, that breather for a game. But he decided not to. And we we got what we got. As I say, I just don't think it works like that for goalies, and they need to be taken out of the team.
Yeah, I always go back to the famous Alex Ferguson, Jim Leighton thing, where, of course, he dropped him for an FA Cup final replay after a horrendous spell of form culminating in an absolute disaster at Wembley. And in his book, he talked about it. He said, Les Sealey, his backup goalkeeper, he says he wasn't as good a goalie as Jim, but he thought he was at that moment. And at that moment, he was more reliable than Jim. And that's kind of where I am in goalkeepers. I don't think Liam Kelly's a great goalkeeper, but at the moment, is he going to be a bit more dependable? He might not be able to make some of the saves that Butland can make, but he's not going to concede goals that suck the air out of a stadium or out of a support or out of a defence. And that's something you think about. And you're right, Barry picks a team. At the end of the day, Barry is the guy picking the side. He's putting these guys in. So if there's regular mistakes happening and they're staying in the side, that is on him. And he needs to take. And he spoke about it afterwards. He said that it's down to him. The other main issue that I think we have is, of course, in the striking position. Now, Cyril Dessers, I feel like we've discussed to death over his 2 years at Rangers, and you will get some people who think that it's far too much focus on him, that there are lots of team failings around him that he carries the can for, that he is a guy who keeps going and keeps performing. And the thing with Cyril is all of that is true. There are no straightforward black and white answers. There are shades of grey all over with him. For me, though, here's an issue. He has 4 very, very presentable chances in the first half at the weekend, and he doesn't take any of them. Now, the previous week at Dundee, he had, I think, 12, of which 7 or 8 are very presentable. It's the ratio, it's the ratio. It's not high enough. You cannot be having the amount of chances he's had in the past 2 games and scoring 1 goal. You just can't. And then he had another couple in the second half. And I get the argument. He keeps going and that he will, again, pop up with a goal and that he continually is available, unlike some of the others, and that lack of effort. It's not his fault. Butland's chucking them in. It's not his fault. We can't defend a high ball through the middle. But games that could be and should be more straightforward are not, because he needs an awful lot of chances to score goals. And while yes, he's scoring some of those chances, for me, it's not nearly enough. And I don't think that we can win titles with him as our leading number 9.
Yeah, I agree. I was watching your post-match video there on the weekend and couldn't agree more in terms of the amount of chances versus the conversions. And the irony is, we were kind of laughing last week, where you've got that situation where it's the most difficult of all the chances that he actually ends up putting away, where you're kind of thinking, like, what am I even watching here? When I do the NARSA weekly update podcast, I do the stats that I get from the Live Score app. I don't know if the stats are true or not, but I make comment every single week. And I'm just not talking about Dessers now. I'm talking about the team as a whole, where shots versus conversions to goals, in my opinion, should be about 50%. And, ideally run about 50%, but, maybe 30 upwards is good. And we're just not, like, obviously on the weekend it was 0 from 9 chances that we had there. His conversion rate is absolutely awful. And the first couple of chances, at the very least, in fact, actually, maybe even all the chances, you might be able to correct me on this, David, having watched it back, but he didn't even hit the target. So he's not even testing the goalie at any point in time. And you just...
He'd one where the keeper makes a decent save, okay, and the rest, were off target.
So, like, literally 0 chance of scoring unless you get a wicked deflection from something, So I don't understand that. I seen a tweet yesterday where they still call them tweets, or an X yesterday, whatever it's called now.
I think they're still.
Is it okay? So where they were talking about Iggaman and his stats and record, obviously we're shaping the attacking line around about Dessers right now, and he has came up with the goals, as you mentioned earlier there, but to the detriment of other people in the team, it would appear. And I just don't understand it, because for the majority of the season, Barry was watching it the exact same way that you and I watch it. You know, he was either in the ground or he's watching it on the TV, and he would do his punditry and such on the various media outlets that he was involved with at the time. And then you get in the building and you think, right, I'm going to, I now have an actual influence here, an opportunity to influence things for a more positive sense. And we're still seeing the exact same stuff from Cyril Dessers, from Jack Butland, from the remainder of the team. So obviously not as easy as we think it is as fans, just saying swap him for that, do this better. But it's I think in the fullness of time, we'll probably use the word enigma when it comes to Dessers, and we'll kind of laugh about the chances that he missed. And his goal record, is as good as we've got at the club. But it's the similar dichotomy that we have here when it comes to Jack Butland, where we're saying you just don't know what you're going to get from this guy. Yes, he'll pull off a wonder save. Yes, he'll score a great goal. But what other detrimental things is he doing for and to the team by the way that he goes about his business? And I know he doesn't mean it. Of course, I mean, he would like to score every single chance he gets. There just doesn't seem to be that absolute clinicalness and that hunger to put the ball in the back of the net that we need. We obviously so very obviously need. When was the last game that we won comfortably? I can't even remember, honestly.
Oh, God, no. Yeah, it was a long time ago, and it's 2 months since we won at Ibrox for crying out loud. So you do need to go back a fair. It was Fenerbahce, weirdly, 3-1 could have been 6 away. When he was brilliant, but again, in domestic matches, and I agree, incidentally, on the point of Igaman, he's wasted out left. You don't get much from him when he's out there. For me, it doesn't work. So Igaman, when he plays through the middle, has a very good goal scoring record. When he plays out wide, he doesn't. So you need to look at that and say, right, okay, if we're making chances, who's more likely to put them away? Now, the argument could be that Dessers' movement and whatnot creates a lot of those chances, and I'd agree with that. But are you better off having a striker who creates 6 chances and might not bury any of them, or a striker who creates 3 and will bury 1? Well, it kind of stands to reason there on that. Other failings in the side, though, should not pass without comment. The defence is howling. I think that's 7 out of the last 9. We've conceded at least 2.
Yeah.
And that includes a run of domestic matches against, let's be honest here, sides that aren't exactly free scoring. Yeah. And it's a very poor defence. Tavernier, legs are away. He's competent enough, but he's nowhere near what he was. And that's, I'm not even getting into all the captaincy issues again. We've talked about it a lot over the years, but he's a diminished footballer. He's not what he was. There's no doubt about that. Age is catching up there, and maybe not so much age, it's just games, miles on the clock. Jefte has never looked a great defender, but he's actually gone downhill this calendar year. Whether or not his head got turned by talk of moves in the summer, I do not know. And the centre-backs have never really looked comfortable together. I've never particularly gelled. None of them, I think, have been particularly outstanding. And we have a real difficulty with balls played over the top, and we have a real difficulty with balls played into channels. And Hibs exploited that because they had pace on the flanks.
Yeah, it's been. How long have we been talking about this in terms of the defence? We haven't had a settled defence for it seems like the longest time. The types and styles of goals. Yes, we've kind of, with Connor Goldson leaving, we had a bit of a quality gap there for a while, which Liam Balogun can fill it at times. But for me, he's been a bomb scare. This last kind of 2 months, maybe not the full calendar year. It's just giveaway after giveaway after giveaway, and that has to be tiredness of the brain or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what that is. But this is, we've been talking about this for, it feels like a decade, the types and styles of goals that we're losing. And I just don't understand how you can get manager after manager after manager, squad after squad, that just does the same things all the time. And even on the weekend there, when I seen the lineup of the team, and I seen that Sterling and Tav were playing, I just had this automatic assumption, because Tav's done relatively well in the centre, that Sterling would go to right back and Tav would stay in the middle. Now, I don't know if they tucked him on the right because of the pace that they might have through the middle, or even, whatever other tactic it was going to be. But, the goals that we lost, the first one, as you said earlier, it was a good shot from the edge of the area. I thought Suter cleared it relatively well. The midfielders just weren't pushing on the guy quite quickly enough to stop the shot going in. But for that second goal, I mean, that's basically everything that's wrong with Rangers with a ball absolutely through the centre, and they're literally surprised when the ball goes right through. They've got that look where they're like, "Oh, didn't expect that." Like, really, pressing so high like that, and knowing that we don't have the pace to be able to get back. I just don't get it. I don't know what the answer is. A complete gut of the back five. That's what it feels like to me right now.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think after a while you have to say they're just not good enough, and we know we need to keep some of them. But I mean, I would certainly sell the two left backs because I think you'll get a fee for both, so they are sellable. We absolutely need to bring in new centre halves. There's zero doubt about that either. New goalkeeper. And as for Tavernier, this is a situation you can get into with a player who's been about for a number of years. Tav is still, as I say, competent. He's still capable of doing some things, but he's not what he was. But he's the highest paid player because of what he has been. But he's still getting paid for what he has been and not for what he is now. And I look at him and I say, can Rangers use that money better? I'd like to think we could, yes. I did say last summer I thought Tav's time was up, and I haven't seen anything at all this season to tell me that I'm wrong there. But the midfield, let's talk about that. The manager went with the flat midfield three. It changed it a bit during the match, but a couple of things about that Rangers midfield. It doesn't score enough goals for a midfield, and I think the passing is of a wildly inconsistent standard. I think Diamandi's a talented player, but too many domestic games passing by. He's best in Europe, where he can take the ball in tight spaces and turn away and get you moving, which is a different job that we require than in domestic matches. Raskin's passing is very erratic. He's brilliant, I think, at hunting the ball down and giving it to someone. But when you are in a game where you're going to have a lot of the ball, and he has to use the ball a lot, he gives it away too much. Barron's the same. They give it away too much for Rangers central midfielders. Ironically, I think, because he's having a renaissance at his boyhood club, and I'm not saying him now, but a player like Scott Arfield, somebody who can get into the box, times his run, has a finish when he gets there. I think we're crying out for that. Even the guys who are the more attacking players who could play in there, Lawrence, Hadji, etc., they're more your number 10s. I'm talking about more a midfielder who arrives in the box and gets on the end of things, as opposed to somebody who takes the ball in front of the defence and plays. And I think we're badly lacking that guy who can get up, support the forwards, get in on things, arrive late. We just do not have a midfielder who's capable of that.
Yeah, and I often wonder what it looks like in the B team, if there is someone there. And forgive me, I don't pay a lot of attention to that. I just know that the players that are in and around the first team squad mostly. But did we realise what we had when Arfield was there? Yes, we did, of course, because we were seeing the fruits of his labour. But unfortunately, he was coming to the end of his tenure, is at the end of his usefulness. I know there's been a lot of people lamenting since he left, because that has been a massive gap that we have just not had at all. And you're exactly right with the Lawrences and Hadjis. That's not the type and style of player that they have. And I think we could label at the team, we haven't scored enough goals from midfield again, like for an absolute age. It feels like a generation almost, if you take Arfield out of the equation. So where are the goals coming from? They're certainly not coming from the strikers, are not enough coming from the strikers. We had this purple patch of a number of seasons where Tav was more than contributing his fair share of goals, and that has completely dried up this year, almost to zero, not to zero, of course, exactly. But I mean, the drop off in terms of I imagine, like everything that he measures himself by, and probably what the sports scientists measure him by at the same time, has gone. So then that's when you need to start to figure out. I think you can coach in the passing. I think you can coach in the ability to transition your play and your style and your concentration and your attitude and your momentum and your motivation between domestic and European games. I think you can't. I can't imagine there would be a player that would just be dumbstruck by the concept of a different type and style of how to go about your job, depending on the type and style of opponent that you're playing. But that instinctive, I think that's a style of play that suits a specific type of player with a specific type of instinct to be able to go and do that. And that's not what we're recruited, and it doesn't seem to be what we're coaching into them. So what are we actually doing? Just continuing to try and do the same things and expect a different result because we have a different type and style of voice in the dressing room? That hasn't worked either. We know that for a fact over the last 5 years as well.
Yeah, I don't think that you can have a kind of random collection of players who don't fit together.
Yeah.
I think that that's what this Rangers squad is. And I think there is a focus on Niels Coppin. I think there deserves to be, because I think that the profile of players that he's signed aren't right. Against that, we don't know what the challenge he was given was. Was it just a case of sign good players that we can sell on, that we can, turn a fee on, sign young players that we can get this trading model going on? But we have too many similar players in certain positions. I don't think we've got the physical DNA that you need to succeed in Scotland. And I think that we've got, as I say, players who don't fit together. They've all have individual skills, but you need to go, right, okay, he can do that, which means we need a player who can do this. And we don't have that. We've got two players who can do that and nobody who can do this. So, for instance, we lack pace up front. We don't have anyone who's particularly quick, which limits it. We don't have a box-to-box midfielder. We don't have a good passer in the middle who can keep you ticking over. And I'm not talking here about Xavi, by the way. I'm talking about Ryan Jack type. Mm-hmm. Someone within our level to buy. I mean, I'm not talking, as I say, about, you need Rodri in there, but somebody who just can knit stuff together, keep it going, keep the moves going. We don't have that in there either. And all of these flaws have been exposed. Now, you get by, which has been a thing about this Rangers team a lot, because occasionally you'll have a Czerny or an Igaman or a Dessers who'll do something, and that's good. But in the games that they don't, then you struggle, and that's what we've witnessed from this Rangers team all season. And there needs to be a kind of, if you like, root and branch decision of how do we want to play. And again, this is when you need sporting directors. This is when you need director, for whatever you want to call it, somebody who's at the top of the tree who goes, right, this is how we're going to play. So recruitment team, we need guys who can do this. We need to hire a manager who can coach this. And then you bring everything together. You don't have all these disparate things. And that's what happened at Rangers over the last few years, because we've been firefighting. We've sacked this manager, brought in another one. He's signed certain players. He's had to keep certain players that the previous manager signed, all of that. And we need to get away from that and get into a much more cohesive model that translates out onto the pitch, which is the most important thing. Now, Gary, something that Barry spoke about afterwards, and Connor Barron spoke about afterwards, which was, are they working hard enough? Are they putting in enough effort? And as fans, I think that's a go-to that we use a lot. We go, he's not trying. And I've always thought, of course he's trying. He's a footballer. He doesn't want to lose, right? It must be much more fun to be sitting winning. So I don't think any footballer goes out and goes, can't be arsed today, I'm not going to bother. That's not, I think, what we mean when we say that they're not giving everything. What I mean by that is there's a psychological thing. I saw Ruben Amorim talking about this yesterday, about his Manchester United team, that it's an edge that we must win. We cannot drop points. And that translates into, if you like, that extra 5-10%. And it's just not there for them at the moment, and it's just not there for us either. When Rangers conceded the second at the weekend, they gave up. By that, I don't mean they stopped running about or they just let Hibs through to score 7 or 8. No, that's not what I mean. I mean, though, that psychologically they went, we're not winning this. We're not coming back. And you could see it. Everything became even more ragged, loose, desperate. That's what I mean. Is that just a lack of confidence, or does it need to come from within? Connor Barron suggested the latter. It's got to come from the individuals. They've all got to be bringing that to the table, that hatred of defeat and that utter raging against the dying of the light right up to the last second, where it doesn't matter if you're a goal or two down, you just keep going and keep going. And that isn't something that we've seen. We've seen it some games, but not enough.
Yeah, I think, it's almost back to what you were saying there previously in terms of the overall strategic philosophy of the club. It really resonated with me when you had said, what is Niels Coppin's remit? What is he actually supposed to be doing there? And is it to buy players for financial gain? Like, the best way to get financial gain in sport, especially in the sport that we love, our football, is to have players successful, to have them working as part of a unit, to have them winning trophies, to have them doing the right things right, and and producing the results that we need to produce. That's the mentality of that's what it should be for me in terms of the club. That's, you sign players that are going to be successful because they fit in with a system, and then the system works, and then it catches people's eye, and then it becomes a kind of a self-feeding machine. So back to I think ultimately, I don't want to sound like an old fart here, but I think the younger generation care differently than we did when we were growing up, and when previous generations of Rangers teams were gracing the pitch and winning trophies and really genuinely competing in every single front. And I just think they care like that differently. It comes across as a potential apathy towards winning and such, but there's almost like this collective, oh well, there's always next week mentality. That's what it kind of feels like. And by the way, that was from some of the managers that we had as well. And actually, there's not, though, because if we don't win this week, it's going to be like a hangover, an emotional hangover we're going to have until the next game. And that's that hatred, as you said, of defeat, and that ability to say, I'm going to do absolutely everything I can to be as influential as I can be in the position that I've been told to play today. And I'm going to make sure everyone knows what I'm doing, and I'm going to encourage everyone around about me. And that collective percentage of gain, because there was still enough time, more than enough time.
Definitely, there was 20 minutes and then injury time. But I'll tell you something that I just got no sense at all in the stadium that they thought they were going to do this.
Yeah.
Fans were still hoping, but the players just immediately, it was like, it's too much now.
Aye, and I think that's exactly what I'm saying. I think if you have that mentality of saying there is zero chance I'm getting beat today. Now, I can only influence 1/11th or 1/15th, depending on how many players come on, of the overall outcome of this game. But if everybody said, I am going to absolutely win, and I know it's a bit of a cliche, everyone has to win their duels, and then we'll see what the rest of the game takes us. But we get that opportunity to just say, there's no chance I'm getting beat today, and everybody does that. That provides you that exponential percentage gains over your opponent. And then if everyone does that, or enough people in the team do that, then you have this collective lift to say, right, well, that's really inconvenient. We didn't hope that we were going to be 2-0 down. We've still got plenty of time. Guys, let's get going here and move on. But there was no one, Barry Ferguson on the side was, and there's nobody in the team that's given the rallying cry. There's the only guy that's Barry Ferguson on the side, giving it, keep going, keep going, keep going. And the rest of the team, they've just got this, it feels like apathy, but there's obviously a lot going on behind this blank stare that you see on a lot of Rangers players' faces, especially after we lose a goal, where it's kind of like they're perplexed. They're in some way a little bit surprised that thing happened. And I don't see where the motivation is coming from. And inherently it has to come from within. And, within that player in that particular occasion. And I don't know, is it some sort of collective lack of responsibility where they're like, well, I'm just one guy of 11 or 14 or 15, as I said earlier there, or I can't put my finger on it without getting too psychological, but the mentality of the team is absolutely nowhere near good enough. Now, back to my generational thing that I said earlier, I don't think the players don't want to win. You mentioned that earlier there, and I don't think that
of course they don't. Every footballer wants to win, but do you hate losing enough?
You're going to do absolutely everything that's necessary to berate your teammates if they need it, to give them an arm around the shoulder if they need it, to collect, to put that extra effort and to put your body on the line, to maybe confer with the coaching staff to say, I'm seeing this on the field, can I do this? Like whatever it is, like that type and style of what would you say, figuring it out, puzzle management, engineering in the game. I just don't see anybody taking the initiative on that. And I don't think that's been coached out of them. I think it's just maybe the way that they are. So we need to get a different type and style of personality in there then.
Yeah, I think as well in modern football that the amount of stats that are now available, which are useful, I'm a bit of a dinosaur, but I do understand that they have their place in it. But I think that sometimes that can tend towards more an individual thing, and it's a more individual world at the moment. Papers have been written, and with more to come, no doubt, on that. But I think that sometimes you can get players to say, well, my pass completion stats are excellent for a midfielder. That's what you're after. Or, my goals to expected goals are good, so I'm filling enough chances. Whereas I think I'm like, what did you win?
Mm.
That's the metric. Because that used to just be the metric. Where did you finish in the league? Where did you finish in the cups? That's your metric, right? And I think that along the way that we've maybe added in a complication there, that sometimes players can be a little bit too focused on things like that and saying, well, I'm doing all right. Yeah, well, the team isn't, so it doesn't matter. All of that is froth, right? It's useful to help you realise what you need to do to get better. In other words, it's a means to an end that I worry sometimes people use as an end in itself. Instead, it should be something to help you get to where you need to go, as opposed to where you need to go full stop. But again, that's a bigger discussion for another day. Now, all of that said, we welcome a far better team than Hibs, far better team than the other teams that we've lost to recently, to Ibrox on Thursday night. Logic should dictate that, well, we've seen the way this team is playing constantly domestically, but logic does seem to go out the window, and all the stuff we've talked about, ironically and annoyingly, I don't think will be a factor. They'll be bang up for this. They might not beat Athletic Bilbao. Athletic Bilbao might turn out to be a better side than us. Realistically, probably should. But I guarantee you the running stats will go up, Gary. The miles covered, the challenges won, all of that will go up. And strangely, I don't have any fears about Rangers putting in a performance on Thursday night.
No, me neither. And my main worry is the fact that it's at Ibrox, quite frankly. But back to the stats thing that you mentioned there, I think if you're getting rewarded for that, if your agent is collecting all this information and then going back from a contract negotiation or a transfer perspective and saying, look at the amount of ground he covers, look at the pass completion, look at the conversion rate, whatever the stats are, I think that can't. I mean, obviously that would be a motivating factor then to say, you know what, I'm going to make sure I run my 10K in this game. I'm going to make sure I complete X amount of passes and stuff like that. And I think from a team perspective, it's going to be very similar. In Europe, we have this expectation now because we've proven the fact that we can manage adversity. We can compete against players and teams that are better than us, that have a bigger budget. We continue to talk about that, especially when we get to the European realm. And we have a track record of positive results from that. So it's almost like everything that we're doing in Europe, just translate that into Scotland, and you're going to live a wonderful life, and you're going to have hero status, and you're going to have a great career and move on with some trophies or some medals in your pocket. I think the challenge here is essentially back to what we were talking about at the beginning of the show, or certainly for the Hibs game. There is, we're in a situation where I believe there's a key 3 or 4 or 5 players that could and should be dropped, immediately from the team. And not to, I'm not talking about humiliating players or calling out specific players for the failings of a team or anything like that. They're just underperforming in their role, and it's not good for them. It's not good for the team to do that. The problem we have is we've got a quarter final of a major European trophy that these players that we've just lamented for the last, God knows how many minutes, I've earned us the right to be excited about a major European quarter-final. So I do not envy at all Barry and the coaching team's dilemma that they're going to have in terms of team selection for this week. But I worry a wee bit that the first game's at home. I really do.
Well then, let's see what. I mean, like I say, I've genuinely no fears. Might not be good enough over 2 games against a top side, but I don't expect to be sitting lamenting work rate or anything that me or the listeners or you or our mates or Barry Ferguson or Connor Barron were lamenting at the weekend, and that I suppose is a part of the issue. Gary, before we wrap up, tell us a little bit about NARSA.
65 it is until NARSA 2025, just over 9 weeks, and it's coming in fast. It always does at this time of the year. At one point, I'm thinking, right, that's 6 months to go. I think we're in good shape, and then bang, we end up in that kind of last mile where we're going through. We have not had our troubles to seek, I don't mind admitting, in terms of ticket sales and general interest in this event. And I guess in the fullness of time, it's almost like, the comparison with the Rangers example, in the fullness of time, we'll probably be able to look back and pinpoint the main key points or indicators as to why that's the case. But, we have a situation where, we do this rolling 2-year planning cycle, which we did for Kissimmee in Florida. We had extra help with experienced Kissimmee and, of course, Rangers Football Club really weighing in and giving us the might of their marketing and such like that. But the event just hasn't been as popular as we anticipated it was going to be, which comes with its own stresses and headaches and logistical challenges and such like that. But we're going to work through it. We're going to have a convention of some description, be a bit smaller than we thought. And the feedback I've gained from my time at NARSA and in the last, 13 years almost, is the smaller conventions are the most intimate and the most enjoyable, because everyone, you're not looking at a vast room thinking, I would never even get a chance to shake everyone's hand here. You get to see and know and maybe talk to people that you didn't normally get a chance to talk to. But you're still going to get the same type and style of convention experience, other than any trophies being there, of course, apart from the Europa League one, which the club, by the way, have confirmed that we will get in Kissimmee should we get through this tie, the next one, and win the final. But yeah, it's the same convention experience where we're going to have the 3 days. I'm just waiting on one last confirmation from the hotel, which I'm hoping to get today, quite honestly, but maybe tomorrow, Wednesday at the absolute latest. And then it's all systems go. We will be announcing the entertainment. We will be making it feel like a convention online, because I know that it's been a wee bit quiet because we've been having multiple conversations with the hotel to basically say, we signed this contract in good faith. The reality has been different to this. We need to work together. So there's been some sleepless nights and some stressful conversations, I don't mind admitting, and it's just one of these things. We'll lick our wounds and convalesce after this and figure out why and figure out what's the best way to go about things. But 12th to the 15th, if anyone's on the fence and anyone's looking for a bit of sunshine and some Rangers banter and such, please come and join us. The tickets are still on sale. Room bookings are still on sale, and you'll have a great time when you're there. Everyone has a great time when they come to the NARSA convention, and this one will absolutely be no different.
Yep, very much looking forward to that. Right then, folks, thank you so much for joining us here on Heart and Hand this week. I'll be back next week. Cammy will be here after Bilbao on Thursday with Heart and Hand Extra, and of course, full coverage leading up to, during, and after over on our Patreon, patreon.com/Heart and Hand. My thanks to our producers, Mike Lee and Paul Myers, and my thanks to my wonderful guest, Gary Gillan. Thanks, Gary.
My pleasure, David. As always, great to chat to you again, my friend.
I'll be back next week. Until then, folks, have a good one. Moan the Teds. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.